Well, evening, Beau. We're John C. Roseman, California. No doubt already you're getting a hell of a lot of response from your own base at this point over here regarding the newest judge on the Supreme Court. And I already knew the deck was already stacked anyway. There's no way in hell the Democrats were ever going to prevent her from getting into the court. It was just inevitable. It does make me depressed concerning about our judicial system, and not to mention the entire system we've got at risk. Our Constitution and the people allowing our Constitution to be changed, warped, and mutilated. They say they want their freedoms, but they're going to be having their freedoms eroded one way or another. They want the capitalism, however, the capitalism costs. They don't like to deal with an epidemic situation that's going on right now, but they've got no choice but to deal with it. And they're all feeling the damn stress at this point over here. They feel like busting out. If they can get someone they think is going to help them out a great deal, they're going to vote for whatever kind of relief they see. A drowning man who actually sees a glass of water, it may or may not be a glass of water, it doesn't matter. He's going to drink the damn thing in the first place, regardless if it's cloudy or not. And that's exactly what we're dealing with right now. We're all drowning. They go back. We're not drowning. We're thirsty as hell. Beau, did you ever watch the movie The American President with Michael Douglas in it? Matt Benning? Wonderful. Wonderful movie. You should either watch the movie or get the clips on YouTube about it. Especially the president's speech, because I always found that moving and motivating. And it's what generated the interest in the series of The West Wing. The time where we had conservatorship going on, we had a liberal president being representative for 8 years. A Democrat under constant fire, dealing with a divided Congress and Senate, and working their way trying to get a judge in the Supreme Court. Sound familiar? Of course, when we had Clinton and we had Bush W. in office, Clinton already did whatever he could concerning about the economy. Bush took over, and then all hell broke loose with the damn war, 9/11, and everything else going hell in the handbasket. Years later, we had to have Obama coming into the office and trying to do whatever he could to do damage control. And after him, we get Trump. And everything goes downhill. You were talking about Democrats wielding the power at this point over here. The thing is, Biden, I'm not putting that much faith or stock in him. I'll put the faith and stock in Kamala at this point. Because he's going to need Kamala's strength at this point to get things ramrodded. But the thing is, she doesn't know how to do with the politicians that very well, and Biden is trying to be the bridge maker. I just hope that he doesn't. I hope he's got some kind of edge right now, because he's dealing with a divided Congress right now as it is. Even though currently we've got a Democratic majority in the House, it's the Senate he's got to work with unless we get a majority going in there as well. It was a miracle enough 2 years ago when we actually had the midterms and the Democrats finally took control of the House. But the Senate still belonged to the Republicans and the executive office still belonged to the Republicans. But the thing is, in the first 2 years of Trump's presidency, when they had the golden ticket, they could write their own damn laws. They had the Senate, they had the House, and they had the executive. What they didn't have was enough of the Supreme Court. And now they got the Supreme Court, and the federal district judges being appointed left and right are going to think along the conservative lines, hopefully along the law's lines, but basically they're still conservatives. And they're going to think that way. McConnell did his damnedest to make sure that way. And their lifetime appointed. Unless, of course, there was some way to write up an amendment in the laws to remove those judges as well, or executive orders. In order to do an executive order, you need to have a president who's willing to do those kind of situations. And I don't see anybody right now willing to do that, even up to this, during this election. Anyway. You're worried about if we're going to be turning into an authoritative regime. What scares the hell out of me is we're going to be turning into a regime almost similar to Venezuela, that close to it. Difference between Venezuela and the United States. Venezuela depended too much on their damn oil exports. They didn't develop any other kind of industries. Basically, it was all for the oil. And because the oil market dropped, and everything else went hell in a handbasket, their economy tanked. They depended upon the revenues to get supplies that they needed, to get food, medical, equipment, personnel, training, livelihood, supporting a government, and not to mention elitism in there. Yeah, the rich, it was all more middle class, and it was the poor shits. And the poor are rebelling like crazy, and they've got their own interim president, trying to get their own interim constitution. But technically, they still have a legal president, they still have a legal constitution. It's a civil war, basically. We haven't heard too much about what the hell's going on over there. Only because everything else for the past year and a half have been dealing with Trump and bullshit and COVID and everything else going on. And anything else happening in the other countries, every developed countries where you actually have warlords who took over democracies and ruled them like an iron fist. I'm talking about Africa. I'm also talking about Asia. I'm talking about Europe. So most of the countries in Europe are not exactly ruled by an iron fist, unless, of course, you had a conservative party that likes to think that way. But they still have to follow the letter of the laws that they've got over there. I hope and pray myself that our country doesn't fall apart either. Because it would scare the hell out of me if we actually did, and I don't know where the hell I'd be going at that point. Because if we actually do end up in an authoritative regime, we're going to have to rebel in one form or another. I'm afraid that words may not be enough, and people will take action, dreaded action. And that's what scares the hell out of me. Using the power to vote is the only way to make sure that our voices are heard. The countdown continues, so is the tension at this point. Will Trump concede if he loses? Will he sue? Now, since we got a conservative basis, they're going to have to look at the legal matters. They're going to have to look at them harder. If we happen to get a contested government, if Trump doesn't relinquish what the voters want, if the voters actually said that we don't want you anymore, he's going to have to fight it out one way or another, or else just relinquish it. But knowing him being a bully, he's going to fight. What scares the hell out of me is we're going to be running into a similar situation if Trump wins. Because people will be fighting about this one as well, one way or another. I fear a civil war and a major outbreak will happen next week. That's what scares the hell out of me. We have never been into a contentious situation as in this particular time that I can remember or even reading about. where we have a politically contested election system, election cycle right now that's going to be telling people that our system is on the brink of collapse. We've had foreign interference driving people mad. We've had a power-hungry Congress of sorts, both sides, the House and the Senate. We have an unstable Supreme Court. Well, we have a very unstable White House. Our country is divided. It scares the hell out of me that we're going into a civil war, if we're not there already. And that's what terrifies the hell out of me, is seeing it in front of me. Over 100 some years ago, we've had a civil war regarding a few issues left and right. But basically, one side didn't like the other side telling the other what to do. They want a loosely confederated system in the South, while in the North they wanted a strong federal system. There's no way in hell they were going to be splitting the country in two. But it was also demonstrated after the Revolutionary War, when they got the Articles of Confederation, that the states who actually had a lot of the power, but not the federal government, was unable to deal with the issues at hand. And the issues of having the federal government and also the bankers gobbling up lands left and right, throwing people off, including the same people who fought like hell to create the country that's attacking them, or had attacked them. So the only way to get the federal government and Congress's attention was go after the federal buildings, but the states didn't have the authority to stop them. Well, because it was federal area, but the federal didn't have the authority either, because there was nothing written in the Constitution to give them that. I'm sorry, they didn't have a Constitution. They had the Articles of Confederation. They had to redraft and make the Great Compromise in order to deal with situations like that. Shays' Rebellion was an excellent teacher. People have forgotten their histories, forgotten context, forgotten everything. And that's what scares the hell out of me. The more I keep sticking it out with the history classes, the more and in literature classes, the more I'm understanding more and more how and why our country was formed in the first place. And more of the struggles. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of videos and a hell of a lot of stuff to write about this stuff. People have been writing books about this one for decades. And now the guys at my age are still learning about this stuff. If we're actually, if I'm going to be one among the few of them, we're actually going through college and learning this shit at my age of 54. This shit should have been taught to the kids, but they weren't. There's not enough of it, and not enough emphasis. And Beau, you got to understand, back in the 80s, if you actually remember the 80s, or actually been around during that time, you understand what the contentions we had during that time. We had a Cold War ending at the point over here. We had Ronald Reagan in charge for 8 years. Economy was tanking again. The trickle-down theory wasn't working much, but we still wanted a strong military. But also we were de-escalating the nuclear arms that we had. But we still needed arms for other things. We had Russia invading Afghanistan. We had Russia invading a few other countries, taking over, trying to continue with their Baltic state. And they're still doing it to this day. And then we got Clinton in office, trying to clean up the damn mess. No, I take that back. We had Ford. No, we had Bush Sr., God bless his soul. I say that because he was a World War II veteran, and I recognize and I salute the veterans. I served veterans, but I am not a veteran. I'm sorry on that one. Suffice it to say that I have respect for the military, but only to a point. If I happen to see the military coming through my damn door, that's a different story altogether. Anyway, we shouldn't have had the judge we have, but unfortunately it was inevitable. I'm hoping next week, somehow, some way, we'll get our senses back. But it's not going to be easy. As I said before, though, it scares the hell out of me. It's a civil war that's here, now. Besides the words being fought, it's also being fought in the streets. Quietly, individually. The marches, the rallies, building up to a point. What scares the hell out of me is seeing that in action. And I don't know how to deal with that one. So, I'm all saying